Are you single?
Isn't the Menos?
Okay.
No, he's not married.
He is not married.
Not married, no, sir.
He is single. You have an address here. Is that the correct address where you will receive mail?
A few immigrants still enter the United States each year. It requires courage to emigrate, to leave behind all but one's own homeland, to leave friends, family, in a new country.
Συγγνώμη, κύριε. Κύριε, παρακαλώ, κύριε. Μπορείτε να μου διευθύνετε σε αυτή τη διάθεση εδώ?
What's the matter? You don't speak English? This is 3 blocks down. 3 blocks. Look. 1 block, 2 blocks, 3 blocks. You go down here 3 blocks and turn to the right.
Ευχαριστώ. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
A foreigner, Duck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome.
Ed Robinson's people were foreigners here too some years back. They came from Wales. Every single American, unless he belongs to one particular group, has either been an immigrant himself or is descended from immigrants. In most American cities, there are neighborhoods where a foreign language is spoken.
そうですね。もう今年の秋はなんとかなるそうですよ。それではまた会いましょう。
Neighborhoods where immigrants overcome loneliness.
Well, that's sort of a corny idea, isn't it?
What do you want to do?
Well, how about the beach? Does that sound good?
Yeah, it sounds exciting.
There are clubs formed originally by immigrants from a common homeland for mutual aid in a strange country and for sociability. Was part of their dream. But when English Quakers sought freedom in America for their beliefs, they found the Massachusetts Puritans no more tolerant than the Church of England. Quakers were whipped and stocked in Massachusetts for practicing their religion. But eventually, the number of England's colonies along the coast grew to 13, and their people included, besides Puritans and Quakers, Englishmen who followed the established church, English Catholics, French Huguenots, Swedish Lutherans who brought from Sweden a more practical way of building houses in the wilderness. There were Portuguese Jews, Dutch Protestants, and a great many Germans of the Mennonite and other sects who introduced the Conestoga wagon. Scottish Presbyterians settled on the frontier from Massachusetts down to Georgia. But in spite of differences, they all shared the dream of a freer, richer life in America and made songs about it. A modern Scottish immigrant remembers one of the old songs.
To the men who went over the sea, we run from our village where the future was bleak. When the end day came round, there was shame on our cheeks. A good health to the men who went over the sea. Now we'll have sheep and cattle, we'll have fields of wheat sown, and the land will soon flower like the heather in bloom. A good health to the men who went over the sea, to a land of great promise where the cold they won't feel. A good health to the men who went over the sea.
When England's rule became oppressive, the people of the 13 colonies took Ben Franklin's advice. in George Washington's Continental Army determined men and women from several different nations, of different religions, held fast to the dream they shared and won their liberty. The nation they founded now guaranteed freedom of religion to everybody and equal citizenship to all men. Well, almost all. 500,000 Africans who had come to America on slavers' ships and toiled for 100 years on its land were still considered only property. But free Negroes were citizens. European aristocrats scoffed. Those polyglot Americans would never make a nation. 4 million people lived in United States territory when independence was won. Not enough to settle a continent. But in less than 150 years, 35 million immigrants from other lands arrived to help with the work. Most of the 35 million newcomers were from Europe, and most had been farmers. Changing patterns of agriculture were forcing European peasants off the land. Some who could muster the courage and scrape together money for passage set out for America. They hoped for land and opportunity. They came in sailing ships in the early 1800s. Foul-tasting water was flavored with vinegar. 1,000 people might be crowded together in the narrow bunks of the steerage. Food was limited and hard to prepare. The crossing took over a month. The newcomers arrived in the ports of Boston and New York penniless, or nearly so. With no money to travel further, they took jobs as laborers. Dreams of a farm were swallowed up in city slums. Before 1850, most newcomers were from Ireland and Germany. In Ireland, failure of potato crops during the 1840s caused widespread famine, starvation, and sent 100,000 destitute Irishmen to America each year for nearly a decade. America put them to work, and their songs became part of its culture.
Tell 'em to do a day to work upon the railway. In 1841 I put me corduroy breeches on, I put me corduroy breeches on to work upon the railway. A day, tell 'em to do a day, tell 'em to do a day to work upon the railway. Well, it's Pat do this and Pat do that without a stocking or cravat. Nothing but an old straw hat to work upon the railway. Let 'em do a day, let 'em do a day, let 'em do a day to work upon the railway.
Settlement of the war with Mexico added the great Southwest to United States territory. Many Mexican citizens remained on the land to become citizens of the United States. Mexican-style fiestas are still popular in cities such as Los Angeles, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Santa Fe. Swing the riata and gallop the horse. It was Mexicans who taught Americans the arts of cattle ranching. Americans translated the Spanish word vaquero as cowboy. They adopted the vaquero's saddle and other equipment, learned his skills, and began driving herds of cattle east to help feed a growing nation. Many of today's prosperous Minnesota farms were first developed by Swedish immigrants. Minnesota reminded them of home. The success of the first settlers brought thousands of their land-hungry countrymen. Their descendants still celebrate, in traditional Swedish costume, a Swedish festival, the raising of the summer pole.
First came to this land, I was not a wealthy man, so I got myself a farm, I did what I could. I called my son, no work done, I called my cow, no milk now, I called my duck, out of luck, I called my farm, muscle in my arm, but the land was sweet and good, I did what I could. But the land was sweet and good, I did what I could.
Among the immigrants were always some intellectuals. Carl Schurz, for example. He became United States Secretary of the Interior. But as a college student in his native Germany, he fought for liberty in the German Revolution of 1848. When the revolution failed, Schurz and others escaped to America. In 1860, he was editing a German-language newspaper in Wisconsin, became a leader in the new Republican Party, and helped nominate Abraham Lincoln as Republican candidate for president. When Civil War came, Schurz put on a uniform to fight again, as he declared, for human liberty. The Union Navy's unique ironclad warship, the Monitor, was designed by another immigrant intellectual, John Ericsson, from Sweden. Defeat of the Confederacy brought freedom to 10 million slaves, descendants of unwilling African immigrants from long before. Their songs of pain and hope are still remembered. After the war, work began on a new railroad across the western wilderness to the growing cities and gold fields of California. But most Californians were too busy to lay tracks east from Sacramento. Immigrants from China took on the job. With primitive equipment, they cut a grade through the rock of the Sierra Nevada mountains, until finally, the Chinese from the west met the Irish from the east. And at Promontory, Utah, the rails were joined. Now, in the port of New York, immigrants began arriving in increasing numbers. They came in steamships now, but the steerage was still crowded. Most of these new immigrants came from southern and eastern Europe, where rural poverty had become chronic. They came seeking economic opportunity. Some came from Poland, others from Armenia, from Slavic lands. They came from Syria and Greece. 4 million came from Italy. Most were still country people, and most began their new life in city slums. They went to work in the new mass production factories, where unskilled hands could learn to do simple jobs. Polish and other Slavic immigrants turned out steel in the new Chicago mills, as some of their descendants still do today. Each group brought its own culture and passed some of it on to America. The diet of Americans became as varied as their former homelands. After 1900, Negroes began leaving southern agriculture for jobs in the cities and began to play the music for which America is best known throughout the world.
Today I get low as a toe. My home ain't here, it's further down the road.
The last great tide of immigrants came to America for the same reason that brought the Puritans 300 years before: religious liberty. Religious persecution in Tsarist Russia brought nearly 2 million Jews to America in the early 1900s. By experience, they were townsmen, not farmers. They had skills in trade and many crafts. The New York garment industry welcomed their abilities, Whole families often worked together in tenement sweatshops to earn a meager living. Their traditions set a high value on education. America's schools, open freely to all, offered a precious opportunity.
Hey, Kite! Don't call me that. Give me the ball. Kite, Kite.
Newcomers have been called kite, bohunk, wop, greaser. In the 1850s, Irish immigrants were violently opposed by the Know-Nothings, a group officially called the Order of the Star-Spangled Banner. Police were shot in a Philadelphia riot. Things hated Irishmen partly because they were Catholics, and spurious anti-Catholic cartoons were published. A popular song, but it had many followers for a time. Vicious opposition to Chinese immigrants was fostered by West Coast labor unions and politicians. Chinese immigrants were excluded for many years. Japanese immigrants made original contributions to California agriculture. But some politicians still appealed to prejudice in their bid for votes. The Ku Klux Klan not only terrorized Negroes, but opposed all foreigners. Yet the newcomers in every period have refused to abandon their dream of freedom and opportunity in America. They have fought to make it real. And many other Americans have always supported them. We learned early in America that freedom becomes secure when it is shared by everybody. In spite of different origins, one heritage belongs to us all. The immigrant heritage. Heritage of courage and hope. And the dream of freedom and equal opportunity in a land of promise.
Suffrage. It's a right of citizens. Yes.
Maybe in war, citizens have suffrage to fight, huh?
No. No, Petrus, no.
Oh, I'll never learn.
Suffrage is the right to vote. Look. Suffer?
I hereby declare on oath
I hereby declare on oath
that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure
that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure
all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince,
All allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince,
potentate, state, or sovereignty,
potentate, state, or sovereignty,
of whom or which I have heretofore
Of whom and which I have heretofore
been a subject or citizen,
been a subject or citizen,
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution and laws of the United States of America
the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Your certificate of citizenship, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.